Thank you. So good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank the organizers for this very nice conference. It's always a true pleasure to be here, to be in CIRM. So today I will present some works on some Keller-Segel type systems that model chemotactic aggregation in the context of local sensing. And I will define in a very short time all those terms. So this is a joint work with Laurent Desvillettes, with Philippe Laurenceau, and with Michel Winkler. So let's start with a bit of modeling in biology. First, what is chemotaxis? Chemotaxis is a very important and ubiquitous biological phenomena that can be defined as the directed movement of an organism in response to a chemical stimulus. So when you have a chemical signal that some organism wants to follow, it may be food, it may be pheromones, and the organism is somehow able to follow the signal. One very famous example is the case of bacteria Escherichia coli that in some context is able to produce itself its own chemoattractant, so its own chemical signal. So in this case, imagine you have a colony of bacteria. Under specific circumstances, the bacteria start to produce the chemical signal. So they start also to be attracted by the signal, so attracted by themselves. It produces self-aggregation, and therefore you end up with the formation of clusters. So here what you see, this is an image from Wikipedia. It's the very beginning of the formation of clusters of bacteria Escherichia coli. Each little stick here is one bacteria, and you see that they are all glued together. When you have chemotaxis, one question that you can ask is how is the organism able to perceive the signal? In this case, one possibility is what we call gradient sensing, is when your organism is somehow able to perceive or compute, let's say, a gradient of signal. So one possibility is, for example, if you have, let's say, one organism like this, a bit elongated, with two receptors, one in the head and one in the tail. Let's say this is the vector alpha, this is the point X, the middle of the organism. And if the organism perceives the concentration of signal C at this point and the concentration C at that point, maybe it's able to compare both and somehow compute the gradient, or at least say, am I going in the right direction or not? If there is more signal here than there, maybe I'm going in the right direction. There are many other possibilities, for example, memory. And then there is what we call local sensing. It's when there is no memory and there's just one receptor in the middle. So the organism can only sense the local concentration. This is the context on which we will focus during all this talk. So chemotactic aggregation with local sensing. The model we write is the following. So here we have a parabolic system with two unknowns. U is the density of cells. Sometimes I say cells, sometimes I say bacteria. For me, it's the same, bacteria, cells. Okay. C is the concentration of chemotactic signal. Let's start with the equation of C. You have some diffusion with diffusivity epsilon. So the signal tends to diffuse in the environment. The signal is produced by the cells with some rate alpha, and it tends to degrade linearly. Now, when we come to the cells, there is this logistic growth, classical, so with an intrinsic growth rate rho, and kappa here is the capacity of the domain. And then there is this big diffusion term, What's important to note is that here C depends on the space, so you have some kind of heterogeneous diffusion. And it's also a cross diffusion because your diffusion here depends on the other unknown of the system. And this term is actually what will represent the attraction, so the fact that the cells are attracted by the signal in the context of local sensing. There are many ways to understand why we choose this specific form to model local sensing. I will not develop that today, but if you were lucky enough to be here yesterday and to see the talk of Elisabetta, you had one possibility to interpret this kind of term as the limit of some more refined models of reaction diffusion type. And finally, last remark is that this model is one specific form of a much wider class, the class of Keller-Segel type, Keller-Segel systems that were introduced at the beginning of the 70s to model chemotactic aggregation. Okay, so this is the model on which we will focus during this talk. I call it Model 1 or System 1. Is there any question so far on this system? Okay, we are now ready to wonder what does this model do. So we see that if we look at the first equation, there are basically two main ingredients. This logistic growth, which is something that tends to stabilize the cell's density towards the capacity kappa. So because of this term, you might expect that U tends to kappa, that is, the cells completely fills the domain. And on the other side, you have this heterogeneous diffusion term, which, as I said, models attraction. So in this case, indirect self-attraction. The cells are attracted by themselves through the signal. So this is something where you expect them to self-aggregate. Maybe U will go above kappa, form bumps or something like that, or at least it should perturb the homogeneous part. So what happens? Okay. So first I would like to show some works from a group of biologists. So it's a paper from Science in 2011, where they work on this very specific form of model. I just want to show a small video of what they do. So this is a colony of engineered bacteria. What you see in white is the density of engineered bacteria. And you see this radial propagation with formation of like radial stripes. And what you see here on the picture is a collection of 4 different experiments of the same type, but with different exact conditions. And so they use this model 1 to understand and to compare it to these experiments. So they discuss the model and they note in particular that the model is able to reproduce the initiation of stripe pattern formation. 1 year later, a biophysics group goes a bit further in the analysis of the same model. In the case where the cell motility, which is this gamma, this function gamma, is chosen as a step function. So gamma, the motility is the function that tells you how the cells react to the chemoattractant. And what they choose for gamma, so if you have gamma of C depending on C, it's just a stem function like this. So here you have, let's say, a constant gamma 1, here a constant 0. This is, let's say, C1. And what they say is that before a certain threshold, there is some constant diffusion. So if there is not enough signal, the cells will tend to diffuse with some fixed diffusivity. And above this threshold, the cells simply stop to diffuse. So with this choice, it's actually possible to rewrite the system in a much simpler form, because the big difficulty in the system is this cross-diffusion term, so this heterogeneous diffusion. And now you can just create domains where either C is above or under the threshold, and then you have a transmission problems between a standard reaction diffusion, where this becomes just a linear diffusion, when gamma is gamma 1, and actually a kind of ODE, because if in the other domain, when C is bigger than C1, you just have no diffusion for you. So with these, they make heuristic computations and numerical analysis, and they are able to compute a traveling wave, which is reproduced here. What you see in black thick here is the signal, the profile of the density, of the same density. You see in particular that it's non-monotonous, so that's why it is said to reproduce these stripes. And in red thick, you see the signal, the profile of the signal. So this is a study which is more heuristic, numerical, but then some mathematicians, Louis and Inomiya, they reproduced in a they made a rigorous proof of the existence of these traveling waves with rigorous computations. Okay, so of course on the okay. So this is the case where gamma is really a step function with only two values. Of course, when gamma is generic, so I said generic, but in general we will consider gammas to be decreasing, because in this type of cross-diffusion term, the monotonicity of gamma tells you whether you have attraction or repulsion. If gamma is increasing, then what you represent is the fact that the cells are repulsed by the signal. This is not what you want. So in our context, we want gamma decreasing, or mostly decreasing, like this, or more smoothly. And this is what represents the attraction. So for generic decreasing motilities, the situation is much more complicated, but still there is one study, a beautiful paper of Li and Wang from 21, where they consider this type of algebraically decreasing motilities for any m positive, and they prove the existence of traveling waves. They compute the minimal wave speed, and they give asymptotic profiles. This is in the whole space, of course. When it comes to bounded domains, there are some results like this. So I rewrite again our model. We're in a bounded domain, so we have to add boundary conditions. Here, these are Neumann homogeneous boundary conditions. This means that the cells and the signal, everything is is confined in the domain. And we have the following results. Are there any questions? Because I hear some. No? Sometimes I change constants depending on the paper I cite. Sometimes I just take some constants equal to 1. Yes.
Why kappa is large in the present slide?
This is their result.
Okay.
And the kappa has to be large. The constant depends on what you put in the gamma, I think. And when somehow gamma tends to constant, so when m tends to 0, the lower bound that they get here, it's I don't remember if it disappears or actually they recover the Fisher KPP condition. So or maybe it's no condition, but they recover the Fisher KPP cases. Does that answer your question? Maybe? Oh.
You mean it's a technical condition for the proof?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's a technical condition. No, I remember that the proof relies on comparison principles. They build a specific super solution or sub-solution. But I'm not really sure where they use exactly this. But we can go back to this after and discuss it. But here I can discuss the condition more if you want. So here, the type of result they obtain, so in the series of a very recent paper, is the fact that in bounded domains, U will actually converge to the capacity of the domain, here 1, and similarly for C. Under the condition, so this is a kind of regularity condition, let's say, on gamma, and then you have this condition that the intrinsic growth rate has to be bigger than some constant, depending on gamma. So here what they say is that if the growth term is dominant in some sense, that they quantify like this, then the effect of the growth, which is to make U converge to 1, is actually dominant, and you can actually prove that U converges to 1, so the cells completely fill the domain. So this is really depending on. In this case, it's not a technical assumption. It's really you really need to suppose that somehow this growth term is dominant. And there is also another study in the same type of ID, actually a series of studies, where you don't take classical quadratic logistic growth, but you replace U here by some generic power law, and you can also have results saying that depending on this power law, if it's big enough, depending on the dimension, then you recover also this stabilization. So this really relies on the fact that the growth is very important, and for me, it's somehow, I want to ask what happens when there is no such type of assumption. So to simplify, I will just study the case where rho is 0. So for now, I will work on this system. So I am in a bounded domain, still with the homogeneous Neumann. And this is the same model, but with rho taken equal to 0. So now in the first equation, I just have this cross-diffusion term, and then C has not changed. Of course, before studying the long-time behavior, I want to make sure that there are long-time solutions. So what about global existence? It's not an artificial question at all, especially in the context of Keller-Segel type systems. We know that there are Keller-Segel systems that don't have global in-time solutions, that show in some contexts are now very well known. There are like many studies. We know that we can have sometimes finite time blow-up, so solutions that exist only in short time and are either don't exist or very complicated to constrict after some finite time. So it's important to check here that under which conditions we have long time, global in-time solutions. And there have been many recent results And now I think we can say that the theory is quite mature, quite complete, and for very reasonable, under very reasonable type of assumptions on gamma, typically for gamma that is positive everywhere and that is decreasing and smooth enough, then you have solutions globally in time, at least in a weak sense, but no, even smoother than that. So we are now ready to study the long-time behavior. And one first thing we can do is to look at the homogeneous steady states and their stability, at least from the linear point of view. So if I take any constant m, and I take u equals c equals m, then this is actually a constant steady state. Because u equals c here, this will disappear, and all the other terms are derivatives. I'm constant. Okay. What about the linearity? I have the following theorem. So we can actually compute in a linear stability setting everything, and we end up with the following. So let's call mu1 the principal eigenvalue of the Laplace operator on omega. Two cases. This quantity minus m gamma prime of m over gamma of m minus 1 can be positive or negative. This completely depends on gamma and m, of course. If this is negative, then you always have that epsilon, which is a positive number, is bigger than this. In this case, the constant steady state mm is linearly, asymptotically stable. If this object is positive, then two possibilities. Either the signal diffuses more, so epsilon is bigger than this, and then you are still stable. Either there is not too much diffusivity, epsilon is less than this quantity, and then you have linear instability. And in this case, we expect that the model, so the model should not make things homogeneous. So we expect that the model is able to represent self-aggregation. And this is something that can be first checked numerically. So this is a numerical simulation where we start with U homogeneous, C completely random. Time zero is not represented. What we see here is the density U in a square. And so you see very quickly some perturbation of the homogeneous density. And then the density starts to form this kind of bubbles. And they tend to glue together and form bigger bumps, less and less, and bigger and bigger. Pay attention to the legend. Here, we started with a density equal to 1. Here, we are less than 6. But at the end of the simulation, the legend is very different. We reach more than 300. So the peaks are really high. Okay, so in this case, we see that indeed in the unstable regime, we have something that apparently seems to model a kind of self-aggregation. Mathematically, what can we say? It all depends on the motility gamma. Gamma is really a super important parameter. There is one specific case that has a very specific structure that allows it to be studied in a very particular context is the case where gamma is exponential, decreasing. And in particular, in dimension 2, we have a phenomena of delayed blow-up. So there is a critical mass which is such that if you start with a density that is below this critical mass, the mass will not change, there is no growth. So we stay in this regime. And in this case, we have uniform in time bounds and also stabilization towards the homogeneous steady state. But for supercritical masses, there are cases where there is a, let's say, blow up in infinite time, which means that we can show that the solutions are not uniformly bounded. So we have global solutions, but they concentrate more and more. Now, a family of motilities that are decreasing, but allow us to study the behavior of the system with a single parameter is the family of algebraic motilities gamma of S equals S minus K. And the parameter is K, which tells you how fast you decrease, so somehow how close you are to the constant or something, decreasing very similarly. In this context, there is a critical value for K, which is 1. When K is less than 1, the system converges towards the homogeneous steady state. And when K is bigger than 1, the situation is more complicated. In some cases, we can show uniform bounds, but we also have, in some other cases, for K here, N is the dimension, we have existence of non-homogeneous steady states. Yep.
Is only the behavior at infinity that matters, or also the degeneracy at 0 in this case? Because you have infinite degeneracy for no values. It's algebraic impatience, or?
No, I think it's mostly at infinity. Yes, it's not the degeneracy. No, I'm trying to remember like the collection of papers, but okay, I will go back. Here, gamma is decreasing towards 0, but the type of equation you have for C, you see that U is positive here, so it's very complicated to get, I mean, you don't expect in general an upper bound for C with very low regularity on U, but lower bounds are easier to get. In this case, the behavior of gamma close to 0 is not so important. This is the general idea, but depending on the papers, sometimes we use this, sometimes not. Okay, and actually very good to be on this, because I wanted to show you that when gamma is S minus K, this quantity is M times minus it's plus K, S minus K minus, this is actually K gamma over gamma, so this is K. So what we have here is K minus 1. So here we already see the critical value of K. If K is less than 1, then K minus 1 is negative. And we are always in this context. So we always have linear stability for K less than 1. For K greater than 1, strictly, then the situation is more complicated. You have both. And this is also what you see, of course, in the rigorous results. So that we are able to show rigorously the stability for K less than 1 and for K bigger than 1. The situation is more complicated. And there are various results. Okay, so let's do some mathematics now. Some proof. I will show you briefly the proof of the stability, the stabilization, in the context of gamma is S minus k with k less than 1. And actually, we can work in a more general setting, more abstract, with gamma decreasing, more precisely gamma prime negative, and S gamma increasing, so with a derivative which is positive. So of course, here if you replace gamma by S minus k, you already see that this means that k is positive, and this means, okay, non-negative, and this means that k is less than 1, less or equal than 1. We define the following quantity, G0, which is defined by the fact that it cancels at m, and its derivative is the following quantity. So somehow, maybe you can see G0 or G0 prime as a primitive of gamma, at least in an algebraic context. Well, it's this quantity. What can I already see on G0 is that because of the two assumptions here, G0 second has a sign. It's positive. Here, the derivative, okay, it's non-negative, sorry. The derivative here is non-negative. The derivative of gamma is non-positive, so all this is non-negative. And thanks to this, I can define L0, which is this very specific object. H1 prime here is the dual space of H1. We will see quickly where it comes from. And so we take the H1 prime norm of U minus M squared plus the integral of G0 of C. Again, just to fix things, M is the initial mean of the initial data of the cell density. It's something that does not move because there is no growth. I mean, it's constant over time. And it's also the potential limit. I mean, the limit we want to show for U. Okay, we will see that L0 is actually a Lyapunov functional. How do we do this? We have the following computation. So, this is the first equation of our system. And I can, because I have conservation of the mass, I can actually write it like this. It does not change anything. And I can, at least at the formal level, apply the operator minus Laplacian minus 1, the inverse of minus Laplacian. That goes from 0 mean to 0 mean. So the spaces of 0 mean to 0 mean. And what I get, somehow, is this. And here, because I go from 0 mean to 0 mean, I have also to subtract the mean. Now, if I test this equation with U minus M, on the right, I get exactly the first object that I wrote. And on the left, U minus M is actually, minus Laplacian of this object. I can do an integration by part of some green equality formula. And I get a gradient of this object squared. And this is exactly, so with the time derivative, this is exactly the semi-norm that I wrote on the left. this computation comes from a series of techniques that are sometimes called duality methods, especially in the context of cross-diffusion or reaction diffusion in general. Now, once I wrote this core equality, I make appear u minus c here, square. I end up with these terms. The blue terms, I rewrite them like that. I replace u using the second equation of the system. When I do that, here, the object I get does not depend, formally, on u anymore. I only have something that depends on c, and I can make easier manipulations. I recognize G0 prime. Well, I defined G0 prime such that what I get here is G0 prime. The dtc times function of c will be just a derivative in time of a function of c. The Laplacian of c times function of c will be up to an integration by part or green formula, a gradient c square terms time this object, and then I have a rest. I get the following equality. I let you read. Questions? This is the same equality that I just rewrote. And this part, I can simply compute it using the equation for c. I can compute the integral of c. So the Laplacian of c disappears with the integral. Integral of u is constant. I reinsert in the previous equality. And I exactly get that the derivative in time of the function L0 is the sum of these three terms. So here, this C gamma of C will go together with the M gamma of M that was here times the integral of C that comes from the combination of that part and that part. So I get this. Thanks to the two assumptions on gamma, so gamma prime negative and S gamma prime positive, I have that this has a sign, it's non-negative, this is always non-negative, and thanks to the assumption, so only the second one, that S gamma of S is non-decreasing, this object also has a sign. So now I have that L0 is non-increasing in time, it's a Lyapunov functional, and I can use this to conclude the on the long time behavior, the fact that U and C will converge towards M. It's pretty, I mean, there is still some technical things to do. Mathematically, it's more involved than just seeing this in the equality. What we obtain is a convergence is actually quite weak spaces. So H minus 2 for U and C in L2. But just to give an idea, we see here already that, okay, from this dissipation term, we expect C to become constant. From this dissipation term, we expect C and U to converge towards the same object. And from this, you expect C to converge towards M. Okay. And I have to finish in a couple of minutes, right? 5 minutes, okay. Questions included? Or I can talk for 5 minutes, or it's up to me? It's up to me, 1 more hour. Okay. Okay. This concludes what I wanted to say on the on this model, this part, on the homogenization, the stabilization towards the homogeneous steady state. And I just want to mention that we can also look at a quasi-linear version of the system where we replace the semi-linear part here, diffusion, by a non-linear function of U, so a type of porous media or non-linear diffusion term. And this accounts for volume filling effect. Because you have a model that represents aggregation, maybe at some point the bacteria have a volume or they feel that they cannot all get in the same point. So the possibility is to add this non-linear diffusion here. So here gamma is still non-increasing for the attraction of the chemotactic attraction, but the function phi has to be increasing to represent self-repulsion somehow. And this model has been studied heuristically by Choi and Kim, and they obtained those beautiful patterns under some circumstances. So here you see the evolution of one simulation, and here you see some fixed time for different parameters. So you see cold spots, hot spots, stripes. And I just want to say that we can somehow adapt the proof I showed you for the semi-linear case in the quasi-linear case and obtain the homogeneous stabilization with the following assumption. So phi gamma prime has to be increasing, which is the generalization of the, or non-decreasing, sorry, which is the generalization of the S gamma of S prime non-negative assumption in the semi-linear case. Okay. And I thank you for your attention.